Hey, this is Notser, and we're talking about two development blog posts, Stalingrad's final version, and 100mm gun is going to be getting a buff for all of those Japanese destroyers that rely heavily on it. But first, the Stalingrad. So it's going to be a tier 10 ship that's a reward for clan warfare, but also the arsenal if you have a ton of steel. And over the course of a couple months, CC's super testers were testing different versions, and the final version of Stalingrad will be as follows. It will be a tier 10 Soviet cruiser using 305mm guns. It will have AP and HE. Its accuracy will sit somewhere in between a cruiser and a battleship, so they described it as similar to the Graf Spee. It's not quite as accurate as a cruiser, but it's not quite as inaccurate as a battleship. It only has the 25mm bow and stern, so it will not be able to bow tank quite like the 32mm version. It'll still have radar, and its range will be formidable. So it's going to be just a different style Moskva, honestly, at the end of the day. I don't know if they're going to add some extra armor at the belt. I don't remember extra belt armor near the waterline at the bow and the stern. So that would be a huge weakness compared to the Moskva at this stage of the game, but clearly it has a larger gun caliber. It should do higher alpha damage. Its HE has a 33% fire chance versus the Moskva's, which is, I think, somewhere in the 17s, 15s range. Way higher. So it could ultimately end up being just an HE spammer. And it's not really the version I wanted. I wanted the AP version, but I wanted it to be less accurate. And we're getting sort of just more of the same, which, I'm not honestly going to ever get it. So it's not a big deal. But at least it's not going to replace the battleship. Because it is a tier 10, it will participate in clan war once clan season actually exists alongside purchasing it. And if it could operate as sort of a battleship in a cruiser slot, well, that wouldn't be too good, I think. So this ultimately ends up being a very reasonable, balanced ship. No real issue for me. Hopefully it's enjoyable for those who will eventually get it, but it's not a premium tier 10. It's not going to give you that kind of income that you're looking for in a premium. It's just a different play style, a different take on the tier 10 Soviet cruiser. So, it ended up being no big deal. The bigger deal is that Wargaming is completely overhauling the 100mm gun that is equipped to the Akizuki, the Kitakaze, the Harugumo. I believe the 100mm variant of the Harikaze. I think that's also included, although they don't mention it in the post. But the way this works is Wargaming changes the gun, and if the gun is equipped to 4 or 5 different ships, well, it changes those ships. And I think that's what's going to happen. However, for this illustrious buff, and the buff is HE penetration goes up from 17mm of armor, where it will guarantee do damage. If it is 20mm without inertia fuse high explosive, it's a shatter. Your HE will shatter. Now it's going to be 25mm base with inertia fuse high explosive. That's going to kick it up over 32. So you will be able to clear that ever important threshold that so many 150 to 155mm guns can clear with inertia fuse high explosive. It's a really big change, and honestly, it's a change that I have been clamoring for a while. I've mentioned this, why not just change it? It's no big deal. Inertia fuse high explosive was required for all of these ships for so many reasons. You can't even pin with your HE on some DDs in the base loadout, so you have to just be baseline effective. But now, with this 25mm base HE penetration, you're basically a light cruiser, and we all know how inertia fuse high explosive is viewed by those same light cruisers. You take that skill, and you basically do damage to every single ship consistently. There's no more shatters on the bow and stern of battleships, cruisers. You can also do damage to a lot of deck, a lot of outside soft outer bits like Yamato and Conqueror. All these ships that have very weak, low armored outer layer. The HE will do damage to that. Obviously, it won't penetrate the Citadel, but having inertia fuse high explosive is honestly awesome now on these ships. You can take a more light cruiser long range role, and you don't need to rely so heavily on using your guns on targets that are soft enough that you can do damage to them. So it's a really big change, and it's one that I really like because it places it right back into a scenario where I could use inertia fuse, continue to use inertia fuse high explosive, or I could decide to pick up radio location. And I don't know which one I want to do, but it's much better than if they were to, say, have the equivalent penetration of all the other DDs. You know, I think 121, not 121, 21 millimeters, 22 millimeters, roughly. That's where the base HE at pin for so many DDs at high tier. They could have gone to that threshold, and they would have killed inertia fuse high explosive, because you don't cross any thresholds of note to justify the 4 points on pretty much every other DD. Instead, what they chose to do is find that threshold where the community has already basically universally agreed that the 4 points end up being worth it, and now you get to say, well, do I want to be a DD hunter? Do I want to fire on battleships and cruisers and, you know, do tons of HE damage? It's up to you, and I love that. It's way better than any other decision they could have made recently, honestly. However, the Akizuki is going to burn for this buff. It's getting slower rudder shift, worse concealment. It's going to just be a worse ship, and that's frustrating for players that have the ship, maneuverability, all that stuff. And you're wondering, why do you have to do that? Well, the Kitakaze played exactly the same as it. I mean, exactly the same as it. Very similar concealment, maneuverability, ship size, gun layout, torpedo. The only difference is it had 2 extra torpedoes on its launcher, and it had slightly better rate of fire with the tier 9 and 10 extra module slot. So this is just wargaming. Someone equated it to MMORPG balance, where one patch you lower the power level of said class, you know, druids or paladins or guardians or any other name you want to give these guys, and then the next patch you buff, you know, another skill or another class, and you say, oh, look at all those great changes we've made. Yeah, well, you just butchered one class or one skill to make another skill relevant, right? So I really don't like that the Akizuki's getting a huge nerf on its performance, because these ships already feel really awkward in and around torpedoes and smoke, and with the meta, it's uncomfortable. So if you don't take advantage of the extra penetration, you just lose power, straight up. And that's not cool. That's not cool at all, wargaming. I don't know why you felt you had to lower it so much. I didn't feel like they were just outperforming the competition. But overall, it's a huge buff for 100 millimeters. It's great. It'll probably inform me of how I need to play the Akizuki. I need to play back further and not try and hunt so many DDs. It's going to be more like a super light cruiser. You're going to fire on battleships and cruisers. Put fire as much as you can on the target. But you're not going to get so close that you're risking torpedoes towards your smoke, or otherwise you can't really maneuver as well as you want. So I'm happy for the change, if for no other reason than I don't need a 14 skill commander before the ship is even viable to play. That was so annoying. And you were going to have 2 more for the tier 9 and tier 10. So if for no other reason, you do not have to have a 14 skill commander to just play the ship, let alone enjoy it. So overall, good information from Wargaming. Let's see what else information they reveal in the coming days, because I have a feeling that they're going to be offering more balance tweaks, and I will absolutely comment on them. I have not posted a game on the Harugumo yet. I will absolutely be posting it, and since they're going to make this change, I'm honestly waiting to see it, because that is something to consider with these ships. And this ship and the Tier 9, the Kitakaze, just basically got a buff. They got no downside changes to them. They're not like the Akizuki. They just straight up pin more. So that needs to be considered. But, overall, super excited. Hope you are too. Let me know in the comments what your opinions are on the Stalingrad and also the 100mm penetration buff. I'm very, obviously, intrigued by the changes and interested, so I'm very curious what your opinions are on it. But that's it for me now. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.